So from your experience, for people that want to start these kind of, whether it be a YouTube channel or even podcasts or even artists that want to collab with other artists, right? As somebody that has worked with a lot of influencers and gotten in contact with a lot of cool people, how would you, speaking to those people, what steps would you give them to say, hey, if you want to collab with somebody that's either at your level or higher, these are some steps or tips that I have done or that you recommend, kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I feel like there's a lot of gray area in this, but you hear all these gurus talk about this is the 1, 2, 3 to step, and I'll promise you, like I'll say this up front, I'm not promising you anything if you're listening to this. I'll just share, what you're asking me. So I think if you're trying to get anyone, if you have a low following or you're just starting out, obviously you don't have a lot of credibility. Maybe like you are credible, like that, you believe in yourself, but the outside world doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know, So the biggest thing that I'll talk about my experience with Matt. So Matt, actually, I love this. I got feedback. I was like, why did you choose me? And so
that is a great question to start asking people.
If you're listening, yes. So if you get the opportunity, obviously this is if you get that one person, this is good for people who have had influence on their podcast or people who haven't and who want to grow. As if you have notes, I'd probably write some of this down. This is what Matt gave me. So obviously I followed Matt and Abby, gave him value. And I followed him and liked some of his stuff about a couple of weeks before I even reached out to him. Also, I did get connected. Like, finding connections is huge. If you find any connections, they have this rule, like you're always 5 people away from that one person you want to get. And so I was actually in the church. I was starting to become good friends with Matt's brother, Caleb and Abby Howard. I did a podcast with them. They have their own business, their Bolt Boutique business, and they were here in Kansas City. And I had them on my podcast first. So crazy, out of nowhere, I made that connection. I'm like, bro, is your brother Matt Howard? He's like, yeah. I'm like, because they look exactly alike. Huh. So I got my connections. I followed them, but also I had 8, 9 podcasts already uploaded. And I was being consistent before I ever reached out to Matt. Yeah. So when Matt saw me, he checked me out, and he's like, a lot of these guys, like, they're not, afraid to, like, I mean, they want to say yes, but they also want to see if you're legit, because
you don't want to waste your time.
Yeah. They have a lot of, I mean, they're doing a lot of stuff. Like, they have important things to do, that's their job. Right. And for a lot of these people. And so he just said, I saw your consistency. I saw that you were legit. I liked your stuff. You didn't seem like you're just trying to get clout. Like, it seems like you were very focused on your purpose off your podcast, pun intended. And so that's why Matt was like, yeah, dude, let's do it. To even to the full extent of like, hey, bro, you could come over to Springfield and like literally do the podcast in our house,
Wild.
So I'd say that, just like being consistent, not, doing what you know to do, just keep starting, keep growing. But I'd say for me, like, if you're trying to reach out to people, just be real. So you need to focus on what you can offer them rather than what they can offer you. And what I mean by that is, like, okay, what can you give to them? Like, by them taking 30, 40 minutes out of their day to be with you, what are you going to give back? So Jacob, you said, hey, like, even just like free coffee samples, thank you notes, all those things, or I'm going to advertise on my website, my business, like literally doing everything in between. If you start focusing more on the person that you're interviewing rather than how much they can grow your business, podcast, brand, whatever it is, you will find yourself growing 10 times more than you would focusing on yourself, So those are some of my tips, man. I think, but in the end, man, it too, like, comes down to the variable. They're just gonna say yes or no.
Yeah,
and so I realized that. And Gary says that too. He's like, you can do all these things, but the more you try, the more chances you have. Yeah. So that's what I do know,
Absolutely. And I think that you'd be surprised sometimes, some of the people that say yes or no. It blows my mind, and it's funny, and I hope that I stay like this, in the sense of, like, there are some people that have some huge notoriety on the podcast that have said yes, and then there are some people, and like, they're like super humble about it, and then there are some people that, like, not many people really know yet, and they're like super like, nah, I ain't got time for you. And I'm like, it makes no sense, because, like, I'm like, this guy who's done all these crazy things is willing to take an hour or half an hour of his time and spend it with me, or invite me over to his studio, whatever the case is. And then there are guys that, like, nobody knows their name, and they're like super cocky about their time, and it's like, it's so
and here's the
wild.
thing, Jake. Yeah, and Jacob, that's why those guys are always going to be growing and being who they are, and that's why those guys will never be anything.
Yeah.
Is because they don't have time for people, or they think they're too good. You know, so
it's wild, man.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. Wrapping it up, I want to just kind of do a little bit more of like these kind of practical tips. Let's talk about gear really quickly. So when you started off, did you have all this fancy gear? Did you not have all this fancy gear, or what?
Dude, I love this question. Yeah. I love practical tips, dude. That's why I listen to podcasts. So yeah, dude, no, I did not. So going back to overthinking, I had a $30 mic I borrowed, no headphones, no nothing. And I did like 7 to 8 episodes before I even bought, the equipment, because I was like, you know what? I looked at the analytics. If I can do 7 or 8, then Christian, you're probably more serious about it. And then I think we should upgrade it. So I kind of had a goal. Then I upgraded to like legit. Now I have a Shure mic, over $100 headphones, a stand. And then I bought for guests, because I was going like guests like live with Matt and Abby. So I bought another Shure mic, another stand, 2 more headphones. So and then obviously you have to buy an audio box. So probably spend $1,000, but no, you can literally do a podcast. Don't let the certain equipment or you looking the part or whatever that you want to think in your mind like stop you from doing what you want to do. You just got to start it. You learn the most after you start, man. That's the thing. Like, I hate
true.
It's like you're trying to write an essay, but if you just look at the paper and you never pick up the pen, you're not going to learn anything. And that's the same thing with life. I think the biggest thing, and this is any practical tip, like this is my best tip when I tell people how, like, Christian, how can you find your passion? And people give me a hard time of like, oh, Christian, you're just the passion guru. Like, you think you can find someone's passion? It's like, that's on you, bro, or that's on you, girl. But the thing is, like, when you're a little kid, your parents tell you, if you want to know if you like something, what do? You try it. So if you want to know if you like pizza, you pick up the piece of pizza and you put it in your mouth and you start chewing. And then, like, man, I love this pepperoni pizza. I want to diversify. I'm going to try it for like pineapple or cheese, So, and I compare that to like industries. You might like entrepreneurship, you might like the pepperoni, but you might not like, the clothing business. That could be the pineapple and ham. I don't like pineapple and ham, So it's like, I tried that. I don't like that, So it's just like, that's what it is, just literally as simple as trying the piece of pizza and like seeing if you like it or not. And the biggest thing too is I think the only thing I don't like about school is like they almost say that failing is bad for you. And I would almost flip the script and say failing is one of the best things for me. It's what you do after failing that kind of determines what you're going to do, who you are. Because you get an F on a piece of paper and it's like, oh my goodness, you're terrible. Focus on your weaknesses, where I would say focus on your strengths. Double down on your strengths. A good business person, if you want to grow anything, they hire people for their weaknesses and they triple down on their strengths. So that's my biggest advice with that.
No, it is so true, man. And that is exactly the answer that I was hoping for, because I couldn't agree more, man. I had like several thousand subscribers on YouTube before I even bought a camera. I was filming everything on my like iPhone 8.
There we go. Love it.
So it's like, and I think there's a story that Mr. Beast, I think he had 200,000 subscribers before he stopped filming on his iPhone 5 and he actually bought a camera, something like that. It's like I love that. I think that you just start, and I could not agree more. And I've said it 1,000 times on this channel. It's like, I have the mentality of just starting and figuring it out as I go, because I learned so much more in that aspect.